Welcome to Engineering Influence, a podcast from the American Council of Engineering Companies. We have embarked on a series of episodes and really focused on emerging technologies, AI, digital twins, machine learning, really all of these technologies that are speeding to every sector of the economy. And of course, engineering is not immune from this. And in a couple of weeks back, we talked about AI and kind of where it is and ChatGPT and really how the technology is developing. And the more that we talked about it after the show, we realized that one show is not enough to actually get into this, to really give it the respect that it deserves. So we decided to do a series. And this is the second episode in that series. And what we're doing is talking about, instead of the technology itself, because everybody knows, it gets a handle on exactly what the technology is. But it's one thing to understand kind of what AI is right now, or ChatGPT, or whatever you want to call it, and however it's being implemented. It's one thing to talk about the technology, and it's another thing completely to talk about how do you use it. And from a business perspective, how do you really implement it and set the policies and procedures to make it successful within your firm? And how do you do it in such a way where it is overall a net benefit? And to talk about this, I'm very pleased to be joined by Nathan Bingham. He is the Chief Digital Officer at Power Engineers. Nathan, thank you for joining us. Really appreciate it today.
Oh, happy to be here.
So, Nathan, really to kick off, I mean, as Chief Digital Officer, what's your overarching view of AI as a tool for the engineering industry? I mean, how do you fall? Do you fall as feeling it's a threat, opportunity? It's another tool in the toolbox? Where do you come from on this whole issue?
I'm of the camp where it's another tool in the toolbox. I'm optimistic for it. I think there's a lot of value to potentially come from it. Though it's not it's not going to solve all our problems. It's not something that is necessarily, I guess, I think it is revolutionary, but it's not going to necessarily change our world completely.
And as someone in charge of really putting all the digital tools together and making them work within a firm, I mean, how did you go about approaching the technology and getting it implemented within the firm? What was that journey like?
So we're still in the journey to some extent, but we started it obviously earlier this year when ChatGPT hit the market and I think had the fastest adoption rate of any technology ever. And at that point, we started, thinking, okay, what do we do with this? What does it mean? And I'm sure everybody else did. And I first made the assumption, and I think it's been a pretty good one, is that we're not going to stop the use of the technology, that we need to find ways to help guide proper usage and not just try to stop it. And we're 9 months into the year, kind of 9 months into ChatGPT, and as I've gotten out and met with various people across the industry, I feel like that was a good assumption, a good first step, because I've heard many people their policy is to not use it. It's been blocked on their systems, and then that's usually followed up with, but we found ways to get around that. And so I don't think that not using it is really a good way to go, that people are going to use it. They'll use it on their personal device somehow, or they'll figure out some way to get access to it.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. People are going to use it whether it's going to be sanctioned or not. The question is whether you decide to make the affirmative step to get ahead of it and actually embrace it and put some controls around it.
Yeah.
I mean, how did you approach the policies that would allow members of the firm, to implement ChatGPT, and how did you start introducing it in the firm? Was it first for limiting it to only, for example, marketing materials for RFP review? How did you kind of get the entry point for it?
Yeah, so it's been challenging because the technology is evolving. I mean, there's been new updates and rollouts and features and capabilities as we have come through the year. And so initially, we started with trying to help our employees understand what the risks of using it were. So education was the first step, and that's the first thing we communicated to the companies. If you're going to use it, be aware of disclosing confidential information. Be aware that it's not always correct. It's using data that's 2 years old, and trying to help those people who would be using it understand what the limitations, what the risks, and such were to use it. And so that's kind of where we started, knowing that we needed something more. And so our next step was to figure out, is there a way to help us or help our employees use it more safely? And that's where we started looking at, initially the main way to do that was through an API into the software, that if you used an API, you keep your internal information internal. It didn't get exposed to the greater chat GPT engines and wasn't used for external learning and all that. And so we started really pursuing and exploring that path, and are still working on that. And we're developing a tool that is internal, that will learn on our own data and interface with that API. Now, what's been, again, interesting is also in that time frame, I believe both Microsoft and OpenAI have both released what I think they're calling enterprise versions that also now, the terms and conditions are that data would stay internal. So like, it's evolving as we're trying to create structure and guidance. The whole everything's changing as we go.
Yeah. It seems like it's kind of it's like the Wild West, but not really. I mean, it's just you're ahead of the curve, right? It's like the company. It's almost like, to a lesser degree, during COVID, and you had some rudimentary, online teams, software, and Zoom apparently, got the market share. And then all of a sudden they start rolling out all the different things that you would want to have in a mature software product, but they didn't have the time to do it because adoption was so quick and everybody started using it that they had to play catch up. But of course, with Zoom, you're not talking about disclosing confidential information on an open source program, which is designed to capture data, right? Because AI is only as good as the data that's actually been put into it. So, how robust do you feel these initial controls are coming out of Microsoft and the other companies that are trying to make these enterprise products?
Oh, I don't know that I can comment on how robust I think they are. What we've done, is we're Microsoft shop, so the Microsoft implementation Bing, I think I can't remember what exactly they call it, but the Bing Chat GPT implementation, is kind of rolled out to us almost unbeknownst to us that we had that capability in the enterprise version. So on policy wise, what we've done is, again, directed our employees to, if they're going to use a chat GPT or large language model, to use that Bing option that gives us that enterprise version, while in parallel we still continue to work on our internal version. And you'd asked previously about policies. We connected up with our legal team and spent quite a bit of time with them and with our cybersecurity team, and talked through, is a policy needed? And what we were concerned about was disclosing information, proprietary information, and putting the company at risk. And the way we ended up approaching it was that we didn't feel like there was necessarily anything new as far as risks go. Now, it was a new tool where you could do it. And so we actually, at the end of the day, did not implement create a new policy. What we did was create guidelines that, again, highlight the risks and things to be aware of. And then we referenced the existing policies that already had, things about our employees that already agreed to these as far as keeping information confidential and those types of things. And so we just highlighted, look, you've already agreed to these policies as your condition of employment. There's this new tool, and AI will, and we kept it open, not just ChatGPT, but AI is going to provide opportunities to potentially allow you to easily breach those policies or break those policies. So be aware of these things. Here's those policies for reference, and just make sure that as you're doing that, look to us for guidance to help you not get into trouble here. And so really we released it as a guideline that references existing policies that already kind of cover the legal basis on what we were concerned with.
Which goes to the idea that, I mean, it's important for firms out there, no matter your size, to have a good data privacy and just data policies in place to restrict the exposure of confidential information, client information, or internal corporate information, and to have that fairly sweeping so that you can adapt those policies to new technologies that come on, that you don't immediately have to create a whole new set of policies or procedures. You can just amend the ones that you have if they're written in the right ways, right? It's the important note of making sure that you actually do have the legwork already done, so that when these new technologies come on the market and everybody's scrambling to use them, that you already have some protection and coverage.
Yeah, no, exactly. Because there's gonna be the next ChatGPT, the next, and if we're always scrambling to catch up with them when it comes to security and confidentiality, then we're always going to be behind. So yeah, those policies need to be in place, and just we need to keep reminding employees that those exist. There'll be new tools and new ways to potentially get into trouble, and so we'll help you navigate that. So that's been our approach at this point, and based on how things have evolving, I think we're pretty happy with that path so far.
Now, when I was talking to the group, offline, they mentioned the development of kind of your own bespoke the program. I think it was called RAM, if I'm not mistaken.
We're calling it Bucky, which is Bucky, that's the name of our mascot.
So so with Bucky, I mean that is the future of the technology. It seems like, and I heard this because we had a group of engineering executives in town, and we had a media dinner with them, and we talked to some reporters about emerging issues with engineering, and AI came up, and it seemed as though everybody around the table was talking about how their individual firms were kind of developing their own bespoke tools and branding them and having them kind of as an internal thing. With Bucky, I mean, is that internally focused right now, or are you hoping to turn that at some point into something that you could actually offer as a service or an enhancement to your existing services for clients?
So right now it is internal, and we look closely at should we be developing anything at all, or should we be using commercial off the shelf offerings? And we're pursuing this internal path for a couple of reasons. The first one is we need to be engaged with AI. We need to understand it, and if we don't start now, we'll just be getting behind as new things come out. We're not going to be able to catch up. So one good reason to get engaged with it at all is just to understand it, and so we understand when new things evolve, how to apply them to our company. The next reason is there's these external tools, and while they can do likely the same thing that our internal tool will be capable of, it's going to be a little more cumbersome from the standpoint of if I want to use OpenAI to analyze documents, I need to compile my own data set, and then I need to feed it into it, and then it can read it, and then it can give me something back. With our internal tool, we're compiling the key data sets that we want, so they will exist, and you won't need to feed those in to ask it questions about those data sets. So we're trying to make the user experience a lot easier and simpler so that they're not having to go through extra steps, spend extra time making sure they have the right information to do their analysis. So we're trying to take that kind of busy work and just get it so people can get the answers they want quickly with an internal tool that's aimed at the data that we want them to be looking at. So
when you looked at, I'm just wondering about it on the implementation again. I mean, when you opened this up and you kind of sanctioned the use of AI, how did you approach it from a departmental standpoint? I mean, was it first kind of the non-client work? Was it more of the internal, firm management and operational side of the house? And if so, how did you kind of broach it and spread it from there?
So, with our internal tool, and I'll speak to, I guess, for the tool in general, we're just kind of letting people do what they might do with it. Now, as we've created this internal tool for our specific internal, using our specific internal data, we before we even could get started on developing anything, we probably had 5 use cases that had been brought to our attention. Like, hey, we want to do this with it, we want to do that with it. A lot of people who had initial exposure thinking of ways to use it. And so we went through a process, developed a business case around, what initial use case do we think could give us the most value with the least effort. And so we did go through that process, developed a business case, looking at different options, and it selected one to pursue kind of as a first case. And as we were developing that case, people were hearing about that. And at this point, we probably have 3 different use cases kind of going in parallel. And initially, these are more focused. We kind of started at things that kind of our back office types of things, proposals and quality management and knowledge transfer types of use cases. We see that can expand towards more engineering tool, kind of outward focused eventually. But we wanted to keep there's a lot of excitement, and I think it's just like it did externally. We see it growing quickly, and so we're really trying to keep it contained to some extent so we can get it done and correct, because if we let it get too big too fast, we're going to have disappointment in the tool. So it is challenging from that regard to keep the user audience small enough to where we can maintain their perceptions and keep them satisfied in what it's doing for them, and not let it just explode and have a bunch of disappointed users.
Yeah, I guess with any new technology, it's it gets exciting really quickly. So it's kind of like managing expectations and maintaining the enthusiasm for the product or for the service with those kind of small control groups. I mean, I don't really see AI kind of going anywhere. If anything, it's just going to strengthen and get more robust over time. I always wonder, there are more firms taking advantage of it. There are more firms that are actually starting to use it for their own business practices. Where do you see this pushing the firm in the future, in terms of the fact that you have all these potential business use cases? You have the necessary step of creating the data sets and all the information that you need to plug in to the tool to be able to properly analyze and have an end result that makes sense. Do you see the need over time for a lot more data specialists, people who might not specifically be engineers, but might be more computer scientists or programmers, to kind of offset, the use of the software?
I don't see that as much as, how do I want to say this? I guess you think about like people needed to further the use of the technology in the company. We definitely will need people to help maintain the interface, to maintain the data sets. So I guess that is a little bit on that data technologist side. I don't see it being a huge addition. I mean, the secret to any firm, any firm's success is their knowledge. And so we still need those engineers and those professionals out there, building the data sets that we'll be using. And so, we will be adding staff to help support those data structures and managing the information and getting it in the right places. So that is a new skill set we will be adding to help maintain and create and maintain AI as it expands. I think there's still a lot of learning as we go to see where that right size is and how much, what skills we actually need. I think with anything software wise, the user experience from a, I guess, implementation standpoint is getting simpler. You don't need to be, you're not deep in creating, C code anymore. You're using more sophisticated languages that make the whole process a little easier. It's so probably the key skill sets we are looking for are more people who understand the architecture and how the data needs to flow. And I think that's really the key for success is that to know what needs to happen where and how to properly connect things in the simplest way possible and not create redundancies and, data sets that can get stranded and not updated or then accessed inadvertently that aren't supposed to. So it's, that makes sense. It's more of an architecture and strategy that I think is key rather than a lot of people pushing data around.
Yeah. Yeah, we just started up a technology committee because, all of these emerging technologies or technologies that have been out there for a while and are now, widely adopted, we're trying to get a handle on them and then get into the not really looking at, what is it, we're looking at the threats, of course, potential threats to the industry, but we're also looking at how firms could take advantage of them and stay ahead of the curve. It's this new territory for us. And I guess from your perspective as a chief, digital officer, what would you expect from a group like ACEC or, the ASCEs of the world, the trade associations that are out there kind of dealing with issues within the industry? I mean, what would be helpful for you? Where do you think that we fit, and how do you think that what would be beneficial from you for seeing, in develop on our end of the house to help you guys do your businesses, right by the technology, and then also, make use of it in the best way possible?
That's a good question. Having not thought specifically about that, the first place I go is thinking about the proper mixture of using AI and using engineering judgment. That having some, we're going to have to decide when is something developed by AI is good enough on its own compared to when does it need an engineering stamp and when does it need that professional oversight. And so where's that line, and who's going to decide that, and who's going to help form those standards around how much can be done, how far can we go and still have it meet our engineering, professional engineering responsibilities to the public, right? That so I think an association, organization like ACEC, I'm thinking about those kinds of things would be very helpful, because right now I think everybody's going to be trying to figure out their own line and how that works. So to have that more standardized and some guidelines in place would be helpful.
For firms out there that are smaller firms that maybe not have the large IT staffs, I mean, how do you think they should start approaching this? I mean, Power has the ability to kind of take a look at this and set policies and procedures, double check with their legal counsel. I mean, for the smaller guys out there who want to use this, where do you think they should start?
That's another very good question. I think, because truthfully, I see technology as a threat to those smaller firms. That the larger firms do have the ability to embrace and potentially develop or accelerate usage of technology such that differentiates them in a cost fashion that hasn't been the case in the past. Right? It's always been the smaller firms are less expensive because they have lower overheads. If the larger firms are able to use technology to lower their delivered costs of service, then the paradigm switches a little bit, right? So I think, for those smaller firms, if they're to survive, they need to be thinking about how to, do something with it, how to use it to improve the way they deliver and create their products. Now, how do they actually do that? I think because it's a new technology, I would think there's opportunities with universities partnering with grad students and other ways like that to potentially get some assistance to accelerate it that maybe would be a less cost solution. But then that all takes time. Takes time away from doing engineering work. So how do you balance that? There's going to have to be an investment made that they're not used to making potentially. But I say all that, but then I've seen small firms that are so creative and come up with these new products, and so there's very motivated people in those firms. So I don't doubt they'll figure it out. In most cases, because I see some of the most creative stuff coming out of small firms.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that the size. I don't think that a small firm should look at this and be scared, saying, "Well, it's too big, we can't do it." I think that's where the innovation comes in. They shouldn't shy away from it, but they should be smart about it, of course. And it seems like when you say about threat, it's everybody kind of looks at AI, and I guess they kind of fall into two camps. Either it's going to revolutionize society and make it better, or it's going to be the end of all things and the AI apocalypse. There's got to be it's more of an opportunity, and I think it's up to the engineering firms themselves to turn it into an opportunity. But it's an important thing for firms to talk about. And I'll put a plug in for the fall conference that's happening in October. Next, really in a couple of days, really the 15th of October. It's a good opportunity to get together and talk about these things. So we want to encourage ACC members to come to these events and actually talk about them, get involved with the committees, because you can share ideas and you can share thoughts in an environment that allows you to do so in a way that's it's non, you don't have to worry about non-compete, or you have to worry about anything like that. So it's good to get involved, but it's good to talk about it. So that's my plug for anybody out there who hasn't registered yet to register. Nathan, I do appreciate your time. We're coming up on running a little bit right around the time where we like to wrap up. A good half an hour is usually our sweet spot on the podcast. Where do you see after ChatGPT? What do you think is going to be the next thing? I hate to prognosticate this, but this came out of kind of nowhere if you weren't paying attention to it. What do you think the next development of the technology is going to be?
I think we're already seeing things with image creation, and I've seen some pretty innovative things that are taking kind of some basic designs and maybe allowing you to easily alter those and show kind of different types of architectural views. So I see it really changing the way we interact with the images we use, and I'm thinking more visual than actual construction initially, but it'll really help in that space to allow people to visualize what's going to be constructed and allow a much more engaging experience to potentially modify it, tweak it, and just see what's possible. So that's where I think I see things going next, just based on what's out there right now and how far along that's coming. So that'd be my estimate or best guess.
I agree with you. I agree with you, because the stuff I use with Adobe on kind of the production of graphical products, the implementation of AI for that, for the ease of creation and manipulation of images. And if you're able to refine it to the point where you can do that with a plan and actually manipulate the plan in such a way where it makes sense through AI, everything starts with text and then moves to visual. So that's probably the next area. So that's something to watch out for as well. So maybe we can talk about that down the line.
Yeah, definitely.
So Nathan Bingham, thank you so much for joining us. It's again, this is a rapidly changing environment, and technology is something else. It's going to revolutionize a lot, but we're trying to get our hands around it, trying to get our arms around it. So I appreciate your time today.
Well, thanks for having me, Jeff. It's been a pleasure talking with you.
Fantastic. And again, this has been Engineering Influence, a podcast from the American Council of Engineering Companies. And we will see you next time, where we'll probably dive a little bit more into AI, and then we're going to look at some digital twins and machine learning and the like. So stay with this series. It's going to be great. And look forward to the next episode. So take care.